The sun was setting over Neo-Sol. Its orange light painted the tall buildings in warm colors. But inside the military research facility, no sunlight reached. The building stood tall and gray against the darkening sky. In a cold room deep inside, a man lay on a metal table. His name was Tae-jun, but no one called him that anymore. Now he was Operative K-139. Doctors and scientists moved around him. They checked screens and typed on tablets. Tae-jun's body was different now. Metal. Parts gleamed where skin should be. Wires ran under what remained of his flesh. Dr. Han looked at the main screen and nodded. Combat efficiency at 100%, he said to the team. Neural suppressors are working correctly. Emotion inhibitors are stable. Tae-jun stared at the ceiling. His eyes were no longer fully human. Small blue lights glowed in them. Data streamed across his vision. Numbers, targets, weapons information, all appeared and disappeared in seconds. The doctors had worked on him for 16 months. They had taken a normal soldier and turned him into something new, something that was more machine than man. His body was now 62% machine. Carbon fiber replaced his muscles. Tiny robots swam in his blood, ready to fix any damage in battle. His bones were reinforced with metal. But the biggest changes were in his brain. The doctors had wiped away his memories. They had added computer parts that stopped him from feeling emotions. Tae-jun could not feel fear. He could not feel pain. He could not feel sadness or happiness. The heavy door opened with a hiss. Colonel Park walked in. He was a short man with a stern face. His uniform was perfectly clean and pressed. He walked slowly around the table, looking at Tae-jun like a man examining a new car. "How is our weapon today?" Colonel Park asked. Dr. Han pushed his glasses up his nose. "He is in perfect condition, sir. All systems are running at optimal levels." Colonel Park nodded. "Good. We need him ready right away. The hegemony forces have taken 3 more of our colony worlds. Their ships will reach Earth space in 3 days. Dr. Han frowned. "Sir, we haven't finished all the tests yet. The emotion suppression systems, we don't have time for more tests." Colonel Park cut him off. "The K-series was made for this exact situation. Earth is in danger. Deploy him to the outer defense line immediately." Dr. Han looked like he wanted to argue, but said nothing. He turned to his team and started giving orders. Tae-jun heard everything they said. His hearing was now 5 times better than a normal human's. But their words meant little to him. The emotion suppressors in his brain kept him from caring. He didn't feel worried about the coming battle. He didn't feel proud to defend Earth. He didn't even feel the basic human wish to stay alive. 2 technicians helped Tae-jun sit up. His movements were smooth and perfect, too perfect for a human. They helped him stand. He was taller than before the surgeries, stronger too. He could lift over 1,000 pounds now. He could run 50 miles per hour. He could go 3 weeks without sleep. "K-139, perform weapons check," Colonel Park ordered. Tae-jun raised his right arm. With a soft mechanical sound, the skin and metal parts shifted. His forearm transformed into a plasma cannon. He aimed at a target on the wall. Without being told to fire, he lowered his arm again. The weapon folded back into his arm. "Good," Colonel Park said. "Now combat stance." Tae-jun moved his body into a fighting position. His left hand formed a fist. Small spikes pushed out from his knuckles, then retracted. His right hand opened and thin cutting blades extended from his fingertips. "Perfect," Colonel Park said with a rare smile. "The aliens won't know what hit them." Dr. Han didn't look happy. "Sir, may I speak with you privately?" The 2 men walked to the corner of the room. Tae-jun could still hear them clearly even though they were whispering. "Colonel, I'm worried about deploying him so soon," Dr. Han said. "The K-series was designed to feel no emotions, but humans aren't meant to live that way. There's a risk of system breakdown under extreme stress." "What are you saying, Doctor?" Colonel Park asked coldly. "I'm saying that the human brain fights against what we've done to it. It tries to rebuild the emotional connections we've cut. In the previous test subjects, this led to mental breakdowns." "The previous subjects were failures," Colonel Park said. "K-139 is different. His system is stable. For now." Dr. Han said. But in battle conditions, we have no choice, Colonel Park interrupted. The hegemony has destroyed every human colony they've reached. Their technology is more advanced than ours. Regular soldiers can't stop them. We need K-139. Dr. Han sighed and nodded. I understand, sir, but I recommend we install a remote shutdown system, just in case. Do it, Colonel Park agreed. They walked back to Taejun. Dr. Han took a small device and connected it to a port in the back of Taejun's neck. He typed a series of commands. Shutdown system installed, Dr. Han announced after a few minutes. If there's any sign of malfunction, we can deactivate him remotely. The technicians continued preparing Taejun for battle. They fitted him with special armor that could withstand extreme temperatures and radiation. They loaded his internal systems with combat data about the hegemony aliens, their weaknesses, their fighting styles, their weapons. Taejun learned that the hegemony had appeared 5 years ago. They were not one alien species, but a group of different species that had joined together. They traveled from galaxy to galaxy, taking over worlds and using up their resources. When Earth had tried to communicate with them, they had attacked, without warning. Now the war had been going on for 3 years. Humans were losing badly. The hegemony had better ships, better weapons, and more soldiers. Earth had only one advantage: soldiers like Taejun. The K-Series project was humanity's last hope. Take him to the launch area, Colonel Park ordered. The technicians guided Taejun through long hallways and into a large room. In the center sat a metal pod just big enough for one person. This was a Tactical Orbital Deployment Pod, a TODP. It would launch Taejun into space and deliver him directly to the battle. As they sealed him inside the pod, something strange happened. A small thought flickered in Taejun's mind. It slipped, past the neural suppressors for just a second. He suddenly realized he couldn't remember what it felt like to want to live. The thought was gone as quickly as it came, covered up by the emotion inhibitors. The pod door closed with a hiss. Darkness surrounded Taejun. The countdown began. In 3 minutes, he would launch. In 5 hours, he would reach the battle. He would fight. He would kill. He would complete his mission or be destroyed trying. Inside the pod, Taejun waited. He did not feel excited. He did not feel scared. He felt nothing at all. That was exactly how they had designed him to be. A perfect weapon. A machine in human form. The countdown reached 0. The pod shot upward with tremendous force. Taejun's journey had begun. The evacuation ship shook violently. Mi-sun grabbed the metal bar above her seat to stay steady. Around her, 200 people were packed tightly in the cargo hold. The air was hot and smelled of sweat and fear. This ship was not made to carry so many people, but there was no choice. Colony Epsilon 7 was under attack. Mi-sun was 17 years old. She had long black hair tied back in a simple ponytail. Her mother, Jimin, sat beside her, holding her hand tightly. They had left their home with only small backpacks. Everything else was left behind. It will be okay, Jimin whispered to her daughter, but her eyes showed she did not believe her own words. The ship shook again. The lights flickered. A voice came over the speakers. This is Captain Byung. The hegemony warships have entered orbit around the colony. Our military escort has been destroyed. The captain paused. They are targeting civilian vessels. All passengers, please prepare for emergency protocols. People began to cry. Some prayed. Others just sat in shocked silence. Jimin pulled Mi-sun closer. Whatever happens, stay quiet, she whispered. Mi-sun nodded. In her pocket was the small wooden flute her grandfather had carved for her years ago. Music had always been her comfort. She played the old folk songs that had been in her family for generations. A loud crash came from above. The ship tilted to one side. Emergency lights came on, bathing everything in red. The main lights went out. They've hit us, someone shouted. They're going to board. The ship's crew members rushed through the cargo hold. They were trying to look calm, but Mi-sun could see the panic in their eyes. Everyone stay in your seats, one crew member said. The ship's defense systems will, he never finished his sentence. A massive boom shook the ship. Mi-sun felt air rushing past her face. The hegemony soldiers had broken through the hull. Chaos erupted. People screamed and pushed to get away from the breach. Mi-sun lost her grip on her mother's hand. She was pushed into the crowd. "Mom," she called. "Mom, where are you?" But her voice was lost in the noise. Mi-sun was carried by the panicked crowd into a side corridor. She managed to slip into a small, maintenance tunnel, away from the rushing people. 3 others followed her: an old man with gray hair, a young father, and his baby. "Close the hatch," the old man said in a low voice. "They will be looking for hiding people soon." Mi-sun pulled. The hatch closed. Through a small ventilation grate she could see into the main cargo hold. What she saw made her cover her mouth to stop from screaming. The hegemony soldiers had entered the ship. They were tall, with gray-blue skin that looked like stone. Their eyes were yellow with black lines. They wore armor that seemed to shift and move like it was alive. Their weapons were long rifles that glowed with blue energy. The aliens were dividing the captured humans into groups. Mi-sun watched as they checked each person's hands and looked at their faces. They seemed to be separating people with technical skills from the others. Engineers, doctors, and technicians were put in one group. Everyone else was put in another. With horror, Mi-sun saw her mother being pushed into the second group. She remembered hearing stories about the hegemony. They took skilled humans to work as slaves. The others were usually killed. One of the alien soldiers spoke. His voice was deep and sounded like rocks grinding together. "All technical assets will be transported to processing center. All non-essential humans will be terminated." Mi-sun bit her hand to keep from crying out. The baby in the maintenance tunnel began to fuss, and the father rocked him gently, fear in his eyes. "Keep the baby quiet," the old man whispered. "They will hear." Just as one of the aliens raised his weapon toward the first group of non-essential humans, a tremendous crash came from the other end of the cargo hold. The emergency airlock door had been smashed inward. It flew across the room and hit 2 hegemony soldiers, crushing them against the wall. In the doorway stood a figure. At first, Mi-sun thought it was another alien, but then she saw it was shaped like a human man. Parts of him gleamed like metal in the red emergency lights. Other parts looked like normal human skin. His eyes glowed blue. The hegemony soldiers turned their weapons toward him. They fired. Blue energy bolts hit the man, but he didn't fall. Where the bolts hit, his skin burned away, showing metal underneath. He moved forward faster than Mi-sun thought possible. It was hard to see exactly what happened next. The man, or whatever he was, moved too quickly. He reached the first alien soldier and grabbed the weapon from its hands. In one smooth motion, he broke the rifle and drove half of it through the alien's chest. Yellow blood sprayed across the floor. The other aliens fired again and again. The man was hit multiple times, but he didn't slow down. He reached the next soldier and punched straight through its armor. His hand came out the other side, holding something that looked like a heart. Mi-sun couldn't watch anymore. She closed her eyes, but she could still hear. The sounds were terrible. Alien screams, the wet sound of bodies being torn apart, the clang of metal against metal. When it finally went quiet, Mi-sun opened her eyes and looked through the grate again. The cargo hold was a scene of horror. Dead hegemony soldiers lay everywhere, their yellow blood mixed with the red blood of humans who had been caught in the fight. In the middle of it all stood the man with the glowing blue eyes. He wasn't even breathing hard. His body was damaged, with parts of metal showing through torn skin, but he seemed to feel no pain. As Mi-sun watched, the small robots in his blood began to repair his wounds. One of the human officers who had survived stepped forward. "Operative K-139, he said in an awed voice. "I never thought I'd see one of the K-series in person." Another survivor whispered, "Taejun. They sent Taejun." The man with the glowing eyes, Taejun, didn't respond to his name. He just looked around the room, his eyes moving in quick, mechanical movements. He seemed to be counting survivors and checking. "For more threats, is everyone okay?" the officer asked the survivors. People began to nod and help each other up. Mi-sun pushed open the hatch and climbed out of the maintenance tunnel. The others followed her. She looked around desperately for her mother. When she saw her among the survivors, Mi-sun ran to her and hugged her tightly. "I thought I lost you," Jimin said, crying. While everyone reunited with loved ones or mourned those who had died, Taejun stood apart. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't resting. He was just watching, like a machine waiting for its next command. Mi-sun couldn't help staring at him. He had saved them all, but there was something scary about him. He didn't seem human anymore. When his eyes passed over where Mi-sun stood with her mother, she felt cold. There was no emotion in that gaze. No happiness at having saved lives. No sadness for those who had died. Nothing at all. The officer approached Taejun cautiously. "Sir, what are your orders? The ship is badly damaged. We can't continue the evacuation." Taejun spoke for the first time. His voice was flat and mechanical. "Secure the ship. Prepare to defend against the next wave of hegemony forces. They will return with greater numbers." "How can we fight?" someone asked. "We're civilians, we don't have weapons." Taejun turned to look at the person who had spoken. "You will not fight. I will." Mi-sun felt her mother squeeze her hand. "What is he?" Mi-sun whispered. "Something new," Jimin answered quietly. "Something they made to fight the aliens." As the officer began organizing the survivors, Taejun walked to the breach in the hull. He looked out at the colony below, where fires burned across the once beautiful settlement. His face showed no reaction to the destruction. No anger. No sadness. Just calm calculation. Mi-sun pulled out her grandfather's flute and held it tightly. In the chaos and fear of that moment, it was her only comfort. She wondered if this strange man, who was part machine and part human, had anything that comforted him. Somehow she doubted it. 3 days passed since the attack on the evacuation ship. The battle for Colony Epsilon 7 continued without pause. Taejun fought without rest, moving from one area to another, clearing buildings and streets of hegemony forces. Human soldiers followed behind him, securing the areas he had cleared and helping survivors. Mi-sun and the other rescued civilians had been taken to a safe zone near the colony's central command post. The military had set up large tents for the refugees. Food was limited and everyone was scared, but at least they were alive. Mi-sun sat on her small cot, watching people move around the camp. Her mother was helping in the medical tent. Many people had been hurt during the attacks. Mi-sun wanted to help too, but the doctors said there were already too many helpers getting in the way. So she sat and waited, holding her grandfather's flute in her hands. She had not played it since the attack. It didn't seem right to make music when so many people were suffering. A loud noise made everyone look up. A military transport vehicle was coming into the camp. In the back, Mi-sun could see Taejun. He was sitting perfectly still, his eyes staring straight ahead. Parts of his body were damaged. A large burn covered one side of his face, showing the metal underneath his skin. The vehicle stopped near the command tent. 2 officers helped Taejun step down, though he didn't seem to need their help. They guided him toward a large metal container that had been set up as a temporary lab. Mi-sun stood up. She felt drawn toward the strange man-machine that had saved them on the ship. Without really thinking about what she was doing, she followed at a distance. The lab container had windows on one side. Mi-sun found a stack of supply boxes nearby. She climbed on them and peeked through the window. Inside, Taejun sat in a large chair. Technicians moved around him, connecting wires to ports in his chest and head. One of them opened a panel in his arm. Mi-sun could see complex machinery inside, glowing with blue light. "Damage report," said a woman in a white coat who seemed to be in charge. One of the technicians looked at a screen. "External damage to sectors 17 through 24. Internal systems functioning at 87%. Neural suppressors showing some degradation." The woman frowned. "What kind of degradation?" "It's minor," the technician said. "But the pattern is concerning. Look at this." He pointed to something on the screen. The woman leaned closer. "That's strange. It looks almost like a virus, but it's not following any pattern we've seen from hegemony bioweapons. Could it be a malfunction in the hardware?" Another technician asked. The woman shook her head. No, this is different. Run a full diagnostic on the emotion inhibitors. They worked for several hours. Mi-sun stayed on her box, watching. She didn't understand most of what they were saying, but she could tell they were worried about something inside Taejun's head. Finally, the woman stepped back. The emotion inhibitors are showing microscopic degradation. The rate is slow, but it's happening. We need to report this to command. Should we take him offline? A technician asked. No, the woman said. We need him operational. The hegemony is planning another major attack tomorrow. Apply a temporary patch to the inhibitors and reinforce the neural suppressors. We don't have the equipment here for a complete reset, the technician said. The patch will only slow the degradation, not stop it. That will have to be enough for now, the woman said. After we win this battle, we can transport him back to the main facility for a full reset. They worked for another hour, then one by one left the lab. Taejun remained in the chair, his systems in low-power mode while the repairs finished. The blue glow of his eyes was dimmer than before. Mi-sun waited until everyone was gone. Then she carefully climbed down from the boxes and approached the lab door. She expected it to be locked, but it opened easily. The technicians must have been in a hurry and forgotten to secure it. Mi-sun stepped inside. The lab was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Taejun sat in the chair, his eyes open but unfocused. He looked almost like he was sleeping with his eyes open. Mi-sun approached slowly. Up close, Taejun looked less scary than he had on the ship. With his systems in low-power mode, he seemed more human. Can you hear me? Mi-sun whispered. Taejun didn't respond. His eyes continued to stare at nothing. Mi-sun sat on a small stool facing him. You saved us on the ship, she said quietly. I wanted to say thank you. Still no response. Mi-sun felt silly talking to someone who couldn't hear her. She was about to leave when her hand touched the flute in her pocket. On impulse, she took it out. My grandfather made this for me, she said, showing the flute to Taejun's unmoving form. He taught me all the old songs. He said music helps us remember who we are. Mi-sun raised the flute to her lips and began to play. The song was one of the oldest her grandfather had taught her. It told the story of a brave warrior who traveled to the land of the dead to bring back his lost love. The notes filled the small lab, soft and clear. Mi-sun closed her eyes as she played, letting the familiar melody comfort her. For a few minutes she could forget about the war, the aliens and the fear. She didn't notice at first when one of the machines connected to Taejun began to beep. She didn't see the screen showing unusual patterns in his neural activity. She only opened her eyes when she heard a soft sound, almost like a sigh. Taejun was looking at her. Not through her like before, but at her. The blue glow in his eyes flickered slightly. Mi-sun stopped playing, startled. Can you hear me now? Taejun didn't speak, but his eyes followed her movements. That was more response than before. Encouraged, Mi-sun continued playing. As the melody flowed, she noticed more changes. Taejun's body seemed less stiff. The blue glow in his eyes pulsed in rhythm with the music. One of the machines was beeping more urgently now, but Mi-sun didn't understand what it meant. She just kept playing until she finished the song. When the last note faded, Taejun blinked, slowly. His lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. Then the blue glow in his eyes stabilized and he became still again. Mi-sun waited, but there was no more movement. Had she imagined the response? She wasn't sure. Suddenly, she heard voices outside. The technicians were coming back. Mi-sun quickly put away her flute and slipped out a side door just as they entered the main entrance. She hid behind the supply boxes again and watched through the window. The technicians went straight to the machines, looking concerned. What happened? The woman in the white coat asked, looking at a screen. These readings are all over the place. It looks like there was a spike in neural activity, a technician said. But it's normal now. Run another diagnostic, the woman ordered. We can't have any surprises during tomorrow's battle. Mi-sun slipped away, her heart beating fast. She wasn't sure what had happened, but she felt like she had connected with Taejun somehow. The music had reached him when words couldn't. That night, Mi-sun couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Taejun and the way his eyes had focused on her when she played. The technicians had said something about emotion inhibitors showing degradation. Was it possible that Taejun was starting to feel things again? In the morning, alarms sounded throughout the camp. The hegemony forces were launching another major attack. Mi-sun watched as Taejun was escorted from the lab to a military vehicle. As he passed near where she stood, she could have sworn his eyes found hers for just a moment. Then he was gone, heading toward the battle once more. Mi-sun clutched her flute tightly. She made a decision right then. When Taejun returned, she would play for him again. There was something inside him, something human, trying to break, free from all the machine parts. And somehow her music was helping that happen. 2 weeks passed. The battle for Colony Epsilon 7 continued day and night. The hegemony forces were strong, but the human defenders fought hard to protect their home. At the center of the defense was Taejun, fighting without rest, moving from one battle to another. Each time Taejun returned to the base for repairs, Mi-sun found a way to get close to him. She would wait until the technicians left, then slip into the lab and play her flute for him. Sometimes she played for only a few minutes before someone came back. Other times she could play for an hour or more. Each time she played, something changed in Taejun. At first, it was only his eyes following her movements. Then his fingers began to tap slightly with the rhythm of the music. Once he even turned his head to watch her better. The technicians noticed changes too. They ran more and more tests, looking worried as they studied the results. The emotion inhibitors are failing faster than we can patch them, one technician told the base commander. It's like his original neural pathways are fighting to reconnect. Is it affecting his combat performance, the commander asked. No, the technician admitted. In fact, his tactical decision-making has improved. He's showing initiative beyond his programming. The commander frowned. Keep monitoring him. If he becomes unstable, we'll terminate and request a new K model from Earth. What the technicians didn't know was that Taejun was beginning to remember. Between battles, as Mi-sun's music flowed through his mind, fragments of memory returned. He remembered growing up in a small farming village. He remembered joining the military to help protect Earth from the hegemony. He remembered volunteering for the K-series program, believing it would make him a better defender of humanity. He hadn't known they would take away his humanity to make him a better weapon. On the 17th day of the battle, Taejun was deployed to defend the colony's power station. The hegemony forces attacked in large numbers, determined to cut off the colony's energy supply. The fight was long and difficult. For the first time, Taejun felt something during battle. Not fear, but concern for the human soldiers fighting alongside him. When he returned to base that night, he was damaged more severely than ever before. Half his body was burned from alien energy weapons. One arm was nearly destroyed. The technicians worked for hours to repair him. His systems are reaching critical stress levels, the lead technician reported. We need to do a full reset. We can't, another technician said. We still don't have the equipment. The supply ship from Earth won't arrive for another week. Then, apply another patch, the lead technician ordered, and increase the power to the neural suppressors. We can't risk losing control of him now. They finished their work late at night. When they left, Taejun remained in the repair chair, his systems running quietly as self-repair programs finished their work. Mi-sun was waiting. She had been watching the lab all day, waiting for her chance. When the technicians finally left, she slipped inside quietly. She sat on her usual stool in front of Taejun and took out her flute. Hello again, she said softly. I heard the battle was bad today, but you kept everyone safe. Taejun didn't respond, but Mi-sun thought his eyes seemed more focused than usual. I'm going to play something different tonight, she said. This is a song about finding your way home after being lost for a long time. Mi-sun began to play. The melody was gentle and sad at first, then grew stronger and more hopeful. As she played, she watched Taejun's face. Something was happening. His expression, usually blank, showed subtle changes. His eyes blinked. His lips pressed together slightly. Suddenly, to Misun's shock, Taijun spoke. What is that called? His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it for talking in a long time. Misun stopped playing, too surprised to continue. You can talk. To me? What is the song called? Taijun asked again. The Long Road Home, Misun answered, her hands shaking slightly. My grandfather taught it to me. Taijun was silent for a long moment. Then he said, I remember music. Misun leaned forward. What do you remember? A festival. Lanterns hanging in trees. People dancing. Taijun's words came slowly, as if each one was difficult to find. I was there, before they made me. This. You're remembering who you were, Misun said excitedly. What else do you remember? Taijun closed his eyes. A house near mountains. My mother cooking. My father teaching me to fish. His hands tightened on the arms of the chair. They told me the procedure would make me stronger. They didn't say it would take everything away. Misun felt tears in her eyes. I'm sorry. Taijun opened his eyes. The blue glow was dimmer now, more like normal human eyes with a faint light behind them. Your music. It does something to the machines in my head, makes paths around the blocks. Should I keep playing? Misun asked. Yes, Taijun said, please. Misun raised her flute again and continued the song. As she played, she watched Taijun's face become more expressive. Emotions showed in his eyes, sadness, longing, even a hint of peace. When she finished, Taijun looked at her directly. What is your name? Misun, she answered. Misun, he repeated. I am Taijun. I know, she said with a small smile. I heard the soldiers say your name. A warning light began to flash on one of the machines connected to Taijun. He looked at it and frowned. The suppressors are trying to reassert control. They know something is wrong. What will happen? Misun asked, worried. They will try to shut down the parts of my brain that are waking up, Taijun explained. They will send technicians to check why the warning was triggered. He looked at Misun. You should go. It's not safe for you to be found here. Misun stood up, but hesitated. Will I see you again? Yes, Taijun said. I will find you. Misun slipped out of the lab just as she heard voices approaching. She hid behind the supply boxes and watched the technicians rush in, responding to the alarm. Through the window she could see them checking machines and running tests on Taijun, but his face was blank again, showing no emotion. He was hiding what was happening inside him. The next morning, alarms blared throughout the base. The final hegemony assault had begun. Their remaining forces were attacking the colony's command center in one desperate push to defeat the human defenders. Misun stood with other refugees as military vehicles rushed past. She saw Taijun sitting in one, heading toward the front line. As he passed, his eyes found hers for a brief moment. There was recognition there, and something more, something human. The battle was the worst yet. Misun could hear the explosions from the refugee camp. Black smoke filled the sky. Emergency teams rushed back and forth, bringing in wounded soldiers. Then, something unexpected happened. A group of hegemony soldiers broke through the defensive line. They weren't heading for the command center, but toward the refugee camp. Panic spread among the civilians. People ran in all directions trying to find safety. Misun's mother grabbed her hand. We need to get to the emergency bunker, Jimin said. They ran with others toward the underground shelter. They were almost there when a hegemony grenade landed, near them. The explosion threw Misun through the air. She hit the ground hard, pain shooting through her body. When she opened her eyes, everything was blurry. She could hear people screaming and the sound of weapons firing. She tried to move, but something heavy was on top of her, a section of wall that had collapsed from the explosion. Mom? Misun called weakly. There was no answer. She felt warm blood running down her face. The weight on her chest made it hard to breathe. She knew she was badly hurt. Then suddenly the weight was lifted away. Mi-sun looked up to see Tae-jun standing over her. His body was damaged from battle, parts of his mechanical systems exposed through torn skin and armor. But his eyes were fully human now, filled with concern and fear. Mi-sun, he said, kneeling beside her. Tae-jun, she whispered. You're supposed to be at the command center. I heard the explosion, he said. I knew you were here. He gently checked her injuries, his face growing more worried. You're hurt badly. Mi-sun tried to smile. Did you leave your post for me? Won't you get in trouble? Tae-jun didn't answer. Instead, he carefully lifted her in his arms and began carrying her toward the medical center. Mi-sun could feel that her body was broken inside. Each step Tae-jun took caused pain to flash through her. My flute, she said suddenly. It was in my pocket. Tae-jun paused and shifted her slightly to reach into her jacket pocket. He pulled out the wooden flute, now cracked from the explosion. He placed it in her hand. Play for me, Mi-sun whispered. Just once. Tae-jun looked at her, understanding in his eyes. He knew what she was asking. He knew she was dying. Please, Mi-sun said. Tae-jun raised the damaged flute to his lips. He had never played before, but his enhanced systems analyzed the instrument instantly. He began to play the song Mi-sun had taught him, The Long Road Home. The notes weren't as beautiful as when Mi-sun played, but they carried the melody clearly. As Mi-sun listened, her pain seemed to fade. She looked up at Tae-jun's face and saw tears, actual human tears, falling from his eyes. You're crying, she said in wonder. Yes, Tae-jun replied between notes. I remember how. Mi-sun smiled. Then her eyes closed and her breathing slowed. Tae-jun continued playing until Mi-sun's heart stopped. Even then he finished the song, tears falling onto her still face. The weapon. The battle for Colony Epsilon 7 ended 3 days after Mi-sun's death. The hegemony forces were finally pushed back. Their ships left orbit, retreating to space. The human defenders had won, but at a terrible cost. Many buildings were destroyed. Many people had died. In the days after the battle, people began picking up the pieces of their broken colony. They cleared rubble, rebuilt homes, and mourned their dead. Through it all, the military searched for their missing weapon. Tae-jun had disappeared after Mi-sun's death. The tracking systems built into his body had gone silent. The military commanders were worried. A K-series operative with failing emotion inhibitors was considered dangerous. He could be anywhere, Colonel Yoon said during a meeting with his officers. We need to find him before his systems completely fail. He could hurt civilians without meaning to. Search teams looked through the ruins of the colony. They checked empty buildings and underground tunnels. They questioned people about any sightings of a man with metal parts and glowing blue eyes, but no one had seen him. On the 4th day after the battle ended, a farmer named Jun-ho was trying to fix his damaged greenhouse on the edge of the colony. The glass roof had been shattered in the fighting. As he worked, he heard a sound from inside. Thinking it might be an animal, he looked through the doorway. To his surprise, he saw a tall man carefully placing a small plant into the soil. The man had strange blue eyes and metal parts showing through torn skin. He was Tae-jun. Jun-ho stepped back in fear, dropping his tools. Tae-jun looked up at the noise. I am not here to hurt you, Tae-jun said. His voice was different than before. It had emotion now. These plants were dying. They needed water and new soil. Jun-ho stared in amazement. He had heard stories about the military's weapon, the man-machine who had fought the hegemony. But this person in his greenhouse seemed gentle, not dangerous. You're him, aren't you? Jun-ho asked. The one they call K-139. My name is Tae-jun, he corrected quietly. Word spread quickly that Tae-jun had been found. By the time military vehicles arrived at the greenhouse, many colonists had gathered around. They watched as soldiers surrounded the building with weapons ready. Colonel Yoon stepped forward with a megaphone. K-139, this is Colonel Yoon. Exit the building immediately. Your systems need urgent maintenance. Inside the greenhouse, Tae-jun carefully finished planting the last seedling. He looked at the small green plants, so fragile yet so determined to live. Then he wiped the dirt from his hands and walked to the door. When Tae-jun stepped outside, the soldiers raised their weapons. But before they could approach him, something unexpected happened. The colonists moved forward, placing themselves between the soldiers and Tae-jun. "This man saved my children," said a woman named Sun-hai. "When the hegemony soldiers broke into our home, he fought them off and carried my daughters to safety. He pulled my husband from under a collapsed wall," said another colonist. "He worked for hours to free people trapped in the rubble." Colonel Yoon looked confused. "Stand aside. K-139 is military property. He has malfunctioned and needs repair." "My name is Tae-jun," Tae-jun said again, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. "I am not your weapon anymore." The colonel's face hardened. "Your emotion inhibitors have failed completely. You're not thinking clearly. You need to return for maintenance." "No," Tae-jun said simply. "I remember who I am now. I remember the man I was before you changed me. I will not go back to being a machine." "You don't have a choice," Colonel Yoon said. He pulled out a small device, the remote shutdown system Dr. Han had installed. "This will deactivate your systems temporarily until we can repair you." Tae-jun stared at the device but didn't move. "If you shut me down, will you wipe away my memories again? Will you make me forget Mi-sun and her music?" At the mention of Mi-sun, some of the colonists nodded. They had heard about the girl who had died in the final attack. Some had seen Tae-jun carrying her body, tears on his face. The standoff might have ended badly, but at that moment the colony governor arrived. Governor Seo was a tall woman with gray hair and a strong voice. She pushed through the crowd until she stood between Colonel Yoon and Tae-jun. "What is happening here?" she demanded. "Colonel," Yoon straightened. "Governor, we are recovering military property. K-139 has malfunctioned and needs urgent repairs." Governor Seo looked at Tae-jun. She saw the sad but determined look in his eyes. She saw how the colonists stood protectively around him. "Is this true?" she asked Tae-jun directly. "Have you malfunctioned?" "I have changed," Tae-jun replied. "My emotion inhibitors have failed. My neural suppressors no longer work. I feel things now. I remember my past. Is that a malfunction or is it healing?" Governor Seo was quiet for a moment. Then she turned to Colonel Yoon. "I have just received news from Earth Space Command. The hegemony fleet is retreating from all human colonies. Their resources are nearly gone after this failed invasion. All the more reason to secure our military assets," Colonel Yoon argued. "We need to prepare for the next conflict." "The war is over," Governor Seo said firmly. "At least for now." She gestured to Tae-jun. "And I believe this man has earned the right to choose his own path." "He's not a man," Colonel Yoon said angrily. "He's a weapon, a piece of military technology worth billions." "Look at him," Governor Seo said. "Look at his eyes. Is that the gaze of a machine, or of a human being who has suffered greatly?" The colonel looked at Tae-jun. For the first time, he seemed to really see the person standing before him, not just the weapon they had created. "The K-series represents years of research," Colonel Yoon said, but his voice had less conviction. "We can't just let him go." "I propose a compromise," Governor Seo said. "Tae-jun will not be decommissioned or have his memories wiped. Instead, he will be studied, respectfully, as a sentient being, not as a piece of equipment. Scientists can learn how his transformation happened, perhaps to help other K-series operatives." "And in return?" Colonel Yoon asked. "In return, he will be free to live here among the people he helped save," Governor Seo said. She looked at Tae-jun. "Is this acceptable to you?" Tae-jun nodded slowly. "Yes, but I have one request." He reached into a pocket and pulled out Mi-sun's broken flute. "I want to bury this properly for her." The compromise was accepted. Military scientists came to the colony to study Tae-jun, but as Governor Seo had promised, they treated him with respect. They discovered that Misun's music had created unique sound patterns that had gradually broken down his neural suppressors. The specific frequencies in the old folk melodies had resonated with parts of his organic brain, creating new pathways around the blocks. But the scientists also discovered something they couldn't fully explain. The music alone should not have been enough to break through such advanced technology. There was another factor they couldn't measure: the human connection that had formed between Misun and Taejun. It seemed that emotion itself, the very thing the inhibitors were designed to prevent, had been the key to breaking them. Taejun chose to stay on Colony Epsilon 7. He helped rebuild homes and businesses destroyed in the battle. He worked in the fields and greenhouses growing food for the colony. His enhanced strength and intelligence made him a valuable member of the community. But more importantly, his growing humanity made him a friend to many. Each evening, Taejun would climb to a small hill overlooking the colony. There he had buried Misun's broken flute under a young tree. He had also made a new flute, carefully carved from wood. He would sit beside the tree and play the songs Misun had taught him. The music carried across the valley, where new homes were rising from the ruins. Other K-series operatives were eventually created for Earth's defense forces. But they were different from Taejun. The scientists had learned that their most effective defenders were not those stripped of human feelings, but those who fought because they cared deeply about what they were protecting. The story of Taejun and Misun spread throughout the human colonies. People told how a dying girl's song had awakened humanity in a machine built for war. The story became a symbol of hope during the rebuilding years, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, what makes us human can never be fully extinguished. Quiet nights when the colonists gathered to share stories, they would fall silent at the sound of a flute playing from the hills, the song of a warrior who had journeyed to the edge of humanity and returned, forever changed.